Hello and welcome to the Indo GAA podcast, and it's an unusual one for me. I actually have someone in the studio with me. We have Dick Clerkin in further fields away, and we have Colm Keys here from Irish Independent. Colm, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Michael.
How's all, Dick?
Mike, we're okay after Sunday, but we're okay. We're coming out of January, but we'll see what we've to look forward to yet. I'm not sure.
Colm, as mad as it all is, it's great to have it all back. It's so frenetic, isn't it? And there's so many things going on. You're trying to keep an eye on hurling and football. You could literally spend a whole weekend watching games or being at games, and you have to really.
Well, from 3 o'clock last Saturday, TG Cahir were showing Meath and Derry, I think, on the YouTube channel. Then obviously you had Donegal and Dublin from Croke Park, and for those that were sitting at home, dry out of the storm that prevailed around Dublin certainly, and a lot of the country, there was Tipperary and Galway. And the following day, obviously TG Cahir's coverage, and then GA Plus are also showing games. So you could sit there and watch hours and hours of hurling and league first round coverage, and certainly from the football point of view, it was very entertaining.
Yeah. I know he's not with us this week, but I'm sure Pat has his ass groove in his couch at home, because I wouldn't say that man moved from the couch. And he probably, on a Saturday and Sunday, I don't think he will be moving from his couch. But lads, there's loads to talk about. We'll start with Division 1. Colm, I will go back to you because I know you were in Salt Hill. Obviously Andy Moran's kind of first competitive game against Galway, finished 3-18 to 2-18. What were your main takeaways from it? Plenty of drama, great scores, and that was the team of the whole weekend. Like, when you look at the scores, they are hurling scores now. That's the way football is now.
Yeah, it was a great game of football from entertainment point of view. Very, very good. I suppose the headlines were Galway scored 2 goals, but they had another 7 chances, and 8 if you include the double chance that they had near the end. Rob Finnerty got the second chance, and Rob Henley made 2 saves. One was cleared off the line by a colleague. So that amount of goal chances for one team alone, it brought phenomenal entertainment. Chaos that Mayo have probably been yearning for over the last number of years, because obviously the team of the last decade that brought them so far was a team that pretty much operated on chaos and loved that frenetic style of play, and it probably shifted a little bit from that to a more structured, orderly game. And managers generally like order rather than chaos, but last Sunday descended into chaos. Mayo had control of the game. They were 11 points up, and my thoughts went back to that game in Tuam that restarted the league programme after COVID. And Mayo destroyed Galway and Tuam that day. Galway, after getting a great start in the league, it was Pádraig Joyce's first season. And when they went 11 points up, got that second goal, and you were thinking, this is going rapidly south for Galway. And this is in Tuam territory, because it was 11 points. It could easily have gone out to 15. And then Galway rallied superbly. They really, really brought fight. And in the chaos that ensued, it was Galway that profited. And I thought they had 3 debutants, and certainly 2 of them really, really stood out for me. And I think it must be unique, and maybe it's not. Maybe it was not anything you could ever prove. But they scored 2-18, and 2-10 of that, 2/3 of their scores were from debutants, guys on the pitch for the first time, which I thought was remarkable.
Oh, that is remarkable, yeah.
Obviously, Mayo and Andy Moran likes to channel the enthusiasm of the people, and I think he's done that. There was 11,500 people in Salt Hill on Sunday. I think the majority of them were from Mayo. The crowds had dipped in recent times. I think there was a league match in Castlebar last year against Tyrone where it was just over 6,000. So that's a dip back up for a game of this nature. No one would like to channel the positivity more than Andy Moran. His express view is to play a more attacking brand of football. I think they certainly did that, but that comes with a vulnerability, and I thought we saw that vulnerability in the closing stages last Sunday.
It's kind of marrying the two, Dick, isn't it? It's been able to play that open, expansive football, put up big scores like you were doing last year when he was coach with G, and you were the highest scoring team in the league. But it's also, listen, sure, that'll come with time. It's just been able to pull the horns in a small bit at the back and make sure, as much as we love the chaos, I'm sure he'd like a lot less of it come championship time.
Yeah, but like most managers will tell you, if you listen to them, you sort of have to look at the resources that you have, look at the players that you have, look at what sits naturally with them and try and play to those strengths. Andy himself is a forward-thinking coach. I think, as Colin touched on back in that team when they had and challenged Dublin, they relished that sort of go forward, bit chaotic. You wonder, that team in the new rules, what could they have won? Because it definitely seems to lend that approach when the more structure didn't suit them. So I think there'll be an element of, let's get them attacking. Let's get the scores up. Like, what's that? 319, 27 points. So that was sort of the average, I would say, thereabouts that he was touring with Monaghan last year. So if you're going out every day with 25 plus points on the board, you don't have to be a defensive genius to work enough to make sure that come 70 or 70 plus minutes that your nose is in front, which arguably is what happened against Galway. Like, they conceded 218, but it doesn't really matter when you're scoring 318. The only thing that matters is if you're ahead. And I think that's probably what he'll try and use the league, and not that you've that much time between the league and championship, but it's get that confidence back. As you say, it's not small things. Get that excitement back in the stands, the excitement talking around the bars and clubs in Mayo, and that sort of generates a bit of enthusiasm that had got sucked out of Mayo football there for a while. And then you can see that in the players, like when fans see the likes of Rob Henley coming back, you've got likes of Aidan O'Shea staying around, Tommy Connery back fit. There's depth there already, and there's still a few boys hanging around to come in, and then you've got young lads, you've got young McHale coming in. So really good place for Mayo football. And most counties get that new manager bounce, and they still got to have a panel that, if they can build on that platform, build on that enthusiasm. Listen, based on what we've seen at the weekend and what we know Andy Moran can bring to a team, albeit he's only a couple of years into his managerial career, they're very much in the reckoning. Early days and all that, but green shoots and plenty of them.
It didn't take long. Well, it was never going to take long, but that bit of buzz is back, and that's great to see.
Well, that's what he's going to bring, and to go down to Galway, and he reminded everybody afterwards that the last 4 games between Mayo and Galway, including the Connacht League final, the FBD Connacht League final the week before, Galway have won. So it was important for Andy Moran in his first game to go down against the old enemy in Salt Hill on a losing streak and turn that around. Whatever happened in the chaos of the closing stages and all of that is something they will obviously look at and seek to fix. And obviously, probably the placement of David McBrien, who's a recognised defender, has played full-back and centre-back for them. He started midfield last Sunday. He's very good at tying up players. 2 years ago in Roscommon when they played Dublin, he did a very good job on Conor Callan, who is coming to Castlebar next weekend. So that's a decision to make, whether to keep him there. They don't have that many players to come back in. Probably not. Donegal McHugh would be a player they would use as a spoiler, as a marker. Diarmuid O'Connor has had a lot of injuries, so interesting to see what the progress he can make. Killian O'Connor is obviously in the background. I don't think we'll see too much from him. And maybe Kobe McDonald, although I think the pressure will be taken off Kobe McDonald somewhat by what Dara Byrne did last weekend. Dara Byrne has been a player that's been talked about. He's a left-footed scorer, not something Mayo have had. He's a different type of player that sells a dummy, takes a shot, goes for it. That's not a type of player. Left-footed free taker too, very good kicker of the ball. Not the type of player Mayo have had. So there looks like there's a bit of balance coming in there. Tommy Connery was back for a league game for the first time in a long time. He's had nearly 2 years interrupted by injury. He was back and he has to find a bit of form too. But Dick mentioned Cian McHale. He's another player that can score. So there are forwards there. There's always the level that Mayo that they don't have the firepower, but it looks like they are assembling that firepower now.
And that point, Colm, we'd always look at these things in the context of an All-Ireland, like at a local level. I think I'm right in saying, are Galway going for 5 in a row in Connacht this year? So that's a marker laid down. I don't know, it's usually fixed where the Connacht final is every year. Do we know where it is this year? Is it in, not sure. So maybe we'll find that out. But, that's a marker in terms of, even if it's in Pearse Stadium, they've gone down there, they've, put the foot on the neck of Galway, who's a bit of a wounded beast at the minute. They were lurking around there as an All-Ireland contender, and they don't want to ship too many losses now in the league and knock the confidence. Now they got plenty of green shoots themselves, a few newcomers, but very important marker in a number of ways for Mayo and Andy for what's to come ahead.
And I think, Dick, you always look at a team that loses and then you look who's missing, and the list is endless, as it always seems to be with Galway. I mean, Pádraig Joyce, and I mentioned it in our preview last week, he must get tired of being asked about when will Damien Comer and Shane Walsh be back. Shane Walsh came off the bench on Sunday. Damien Comer was in the stands. Pádraig mentioned afterwards that we won't see Comer for a long time, and that seems to be the position in Galway, that he has some injury, and it looks like it's going to keep him out for a long time. So maybe the questions will fade away on Comer for the time being. But they didn't have Matthew Tierney, they didn't have Cian Darcy. They were named at the outset. They don't have John Maher. He broke a bone in his ankle in a club match last year. Matthew Thompson is away. Paul Conroy is very much undecided about his future. So there's a long list there of players. And also a lot of Killian McDade, I should mention him too. These are all players that give them a strong foothold around the middle. Some of your best catchers, Cian Darcy, John Maher, powerful men. Matthew Tierney too can do a job for Galway around the middle. Matthew Thompson was their playmaker inside. Such a breakout year last year. So these are all top quality players they're missing. And significantly enough, they were under pressure from their own kick-out, especially in the second half for a period there. When you have Maher and Darcy and Tierney back in, possibly Conroy. Peter Cook won't be playing with them this year. He's committed to working in London, so Pádraig Joyce has ruled him out. But when they get those players back, and they can put Sean Kelly maybe back to that attacking role out of defence, they will be a different team.
There's no team like them with as many players coming and going, or you're missing when you list off like the names, but it is a kind of a common thing. I suppose a lot of people need to take jerseys and make it very, very difficult for these lads to get back in. A certain amount of them obviously will get back in, but you're not going to have them all either. So they kind of
that's the nature of it. That's why there are 35 and even up to Liam Cahill, Tipperary is 43 right now. I'm sure he'll pare that back. The games come so thick and fast. Now, 7 games in football over 9 weeks. There are, in these conditions, there's going to be lots of injuries, especially at training, everything else. There's going to be attrition, and you're going to need numbers. And last weekend at Central Council, the GAA increased the number of All-Ireland medals that they are giving out. Obviously, counties go and buy them, but they're increasing them from 26 to 35, probably a recognition of the official size of a squad now.
Yeah, in realistic terms, that's what.
And that's going to a big thing. Like even looking back at last year, the way Kerry timed the run and peaked at the right time, and the load. And I'm just watching games now, and the physicality, the pace, the fitness, the attrition. Managing your panel. And being able to have the confidence to hold players back, give players, the space to sort of get their opportunity and grow and sort of have a longer game, I think is important. Maybe Pádraig Joyce will sort of have to sort of just let these young boys at it. If these boys the other boys that are on the fringes, if they come back, well and good. But if he can get through the league, the way that the fixtures are going to go, they'll do enough to stay up, even if it's not great. But they're looking to get back to Croke Park in July and to be a bit fresher and bouncing off the ground than they were last year, because I would have felt Galway didn't peak when they got to Croke Park too often. They looked stale and tired, and where they'd played better earlier parts in the year. So maybe a change of tact for that Galway team, and Pádraig Joyce himself to be mentally fresh when it really matters. Maybe no bad thing either.
I think I'd agree with that. I don't think progress in the league. Pádraig has always said that, this national title, we'd like to go and win it. I think getting those players back and getting them in that structure that they need is a priority. He'll be happy with Fionn McDonough's performance. 1-4. He's about 6'5". He could even be 6'6", something that I won't say 6'7". That generates a reaction around the place, Michael. But so we'll call him 6'6".
You need to stand beside him someday, and we'll find out fairly quickly.
Well, I actually am 6'7".
Are you? Come on.
So,
lads, you'd make some midfield pairing.
Shoes on or shoes off. We used to do that joke about it.
But he is an imposing player. Phil McDonough looked an imposing player who can play football.
Yeah.
His turn for a big man, well able.
That's his sister that's out in
Australia.
AFLW, and I think they're first cousins of the Shootays from Dublin as well, I think.
Right.
Yeah. He's fair talent now.
There's a bit of trivia for you now.
Yeah.
Oh, geez,
And
doing his research.
And the centre forward, Cian Mulhern, what a passer of the ball he is. So Pádraig Joyce would be happy with the progression of those two last weekend. Oisin McDonough scored a 2-pointer and a point. So there are other players there, and Seamus Lynchy came off the bench. He's a name that you would hear in Galway that has potential as well. So it's there. They have a very broad panel.
They're all right.
Just looking at the second game in Croke Park on Saturday evening, we'll come back to the first game in a bit. It was obviously Jim McGuinness's first time before the media since last year's All-Ireland final. The question was always going to be put at him, because the big talk after was, why didn't they obviously man Mark David with Brendan McCall? Why didn't they pick up Paddy Clifford? And I'll just read you his answer. He said, I don't have an opinion. You guys are the ones that have opinions. We just do our work, and that's the bottom line. I don't listen to anybody. I just coach the team. There's loads of opinions out there and loads of people saying loads of things, but at the end of the day, that doesn't have any impact on my thinking whatsoever. I don't listen to those people. Most of them have never coached at inter-county level. Most of them have never stood in a sideline. Most of them have never won anything as a coach. I only take counsel from people that have been there and done that. If it's an All-Ireland winning manager or top coach, I listen to them and I listen to what they have to say, but I don't listen to anyone outside of that because it doesn't make sense. I was always told to listen to everybody and that you always take something from anybody. Dick, what about you? It was spiky enough, but he's obviously he does listen to certain things because he's obviously been listening to all the commentary about that, and this is some of his reaction to it.
Yeah, how much do you want to say about it?
As much as you like.
I know, yeah, and I get myself in trouble, and I'll say something I shouldn't, and I think it was needless. I think Jim, and possibly I would get it said to me from Donegal people that you're hard on Donegal or this and that, but sometimes people forget the compliments and the praise that's often sort of put forward, and I think Jim sort of dismisses that too. There's nothing taken away from his talent as a coach and what he brings to the game, and that's cemented in record whether he wins another Ireland or not. So, but the idea that us, Colm, Mike, myself, 90% of people that are writing and commenting on games, and even
99.9%,
99.9%. It's a very small pool that Jim is allowing himself to listen to by his own admission. It doesn't stack up, it just doesn't, and there's so many contradictions into it. I don't know where it's coming from. You made reference to it in your own column, Colin, in terms of other managers that he would possibly listen to that have said the same thing. But if you take it at a simple level, Jim was somebody that after his first tenure with Donegal, he went into another code and tried to make a career for himself and go into dressing rooms that by his own yardstick now they should not have been listening to him and he had no place to be. But I wouldn't like to think that he thought that that's what they should think of him or anybody else like that. At the end of the day, lots of people come from different backgrounds and at different stages into coaching and playing. They all bring something different. Some of the best managers in the game never kicked a ball. They started out never having won anything, and it turned around that they were some of the best managers in the game. So it smacked of a bit of elitism and was unnecessary, a bit of a slight against a lot of people, yourselves included, that this is your profession. What are we all supposed to do? Just say nothing and be only complimentary? We don't want to get into that sort of group think. I would have been one that when I was playing, I wouldn't have took criticism well, but it was part of the game and you accepted it. And it's not criticism. If you're looking at a game and you're asked an opinion and why did X and Y happen, there's nothing wrong in doing that. And he's right. He doesn't have to listen to us. But that doesn't mean that we can't have an opinion. And that doesn't equally mean that we're wrong. But that's he's right. He doesn't have to listen to us. Nobody's asking for him to listen to us. But that's not going to stop us having an opinion either. Right.
Colm, just a quick one, right? So just say his backroom team, none of which have won All-Irelands as coaches, including his brother-in-law, Colin McFadden. We obviously had Luke Barrett was involved last year and stepped away. Jim, by anyone I've spoken to, is as hands-on as they come, and on the training pitch, I don't know what the right word is. Is control a word that you would use? That that he likes to dictate what they're doing and is very, very hands-on, and it's not that it's his way or the highway, but there's a bit of that, is there?
I think there probably is, and he has great faith in his own ability as a
which
coach,
is very
probably
admirable.
justified because he has a great record with Donegal. If you look at Donegal before he came as manager in 2011 and look where they are now in terms of the numbers of Ulster titles, he lit that fire, very much so. So he is in a position of strength here. Now, when he's answering questions to members of the media, and this was the only opportunity that certainly national journalists would have asked to go back. I did ask him about Paddy Clifford after the All-Ireland final. He said that's not for today. It's probably going to be a point of discussion, which is fair enough. 15, 20 minutes after the All-Ireland final, you're not going to digest that. But in the last 7 months, I would think it is the main topic of conversation with regard to Donegal's participation in that All-Ireland final was the Paddy Clifford question and the system that they have in place, the zonal system where they would only engage him when he came so far. Everybody would have an opinion. My opinion would be a player like that, a creative player like that, you man mark him no matter where he goes, because you have to provide a distraction. You cannot give him an armchair ride like he got last year to be able to pick. He got very comfortable, got into a flow into that game and just dictated. Tyrone went man-to-man with him with Niall Devlin. He still played well, but he probably wasn't as influential. Now, maybe David Clifford benefited from the space allowed behind that. That's a possibility. He looked to have a lot of room that day, but David Clifford played so well in both games. Probably was on less ball in the All-Ireland final, but produced more. His economy was great. But when those questions that our colleagues asked, and I think it probably got to 3 or 4. I'm not sure, I wasn't there. But there was probably an element of frustration from Jim McGuinness that he had to be answering questions 7 months later. The fact is, he didn't really answer any questions, or he didn't. Now, he doesn't have to answer them. Dick made that point, and that's fair enough. He has his own views of where he takes counsel from and where he listens to opinions. But when you're dealing with the media, you're looking over the media. You're talking to the public, to the Donegal public. And the Donegal public, who are very, very supportive of Donegal, probably would have liked to hear rationale and explanation for how their team performed in an All-Ireland final. It's not as if they want him hung, drawn and quartered. Nothing like that. He commands huge respect. If he managed the team for the next 10 years, Donegal would be absolutely delighted. But on the issue of Paddy Clifford and on the issue of the way they set up, they were quite prepared to put a man marker on David Clifford, obviously. I felt they should have gone with Paddy as well. Not hindsight, who would have thought that.
And just on that, Colm,
anyway,
if other players beat you as a result of that, perceived lesser lights, I'd be happier that if, Joe O'Connor beats you, not saying he's a lesser light, but that you go after the pillars.
Yeah.
And if other lads step up and take advantage of that space, fair game. But that you don't look at an obvious threat and not do something to stifle him. That would be my reading on it.
I would have thought so, that a distraction probably to be on a player's case is probably a player like him. Don't allow him to settle. Don't allow him. Give him, as I said, that armchair ride. But look, all that considered, Donegal, with the system they had, went a long, long way. So obviously, but it is a cause for reflection. And I think Jim McGuinness has probably said that in some of the post-match interviews in the McKenna Cup and maybe back at the Ulster launch. He has said that. But these questions came again from different sources. So it was probably an element of frustration in that regard. But when you're answering those questions, as I said, you're talking over the media, you're talking to your public. And that's where the difference is. Dick quoted, I actually, All-Ireland managers, he said All-Ireland winning managers or top coaches. I looked back at maybe 2 of the All-Ireland winning managers. I think there's about 15 to 16 living All-Ireland managers.
Unless Jim Gavin gets into coaching,
Jim Gavin does not have a media platform. A lot of them don't. But 2 that did are Brian McAniff in his Donegal Democrat column and Eamon Fitzmaurice in the Irish Examiner. Eamon Fitzmaurice said, it's probably zonal defence. You'll see a lot more one-to-one defending, he said, on the Monday after the All-Ireland final. And Brian McAniff referenced Paddy Clifford having the freedom of Croke Park. So that reflects what people were thinking, and they're All-Ireland winning managers. And as far as I could see and read, they weren't really saying anything different to what anyone else was. So if you take the counsel from Brian McAniff and Eamon Fitzmaurice, well, it's not really a lot different. I don't think Jim McGuinness will care. I think he'll be driven. I really don't. He doesn't care about these things.
Well, that's actually I think he does. That's why he spoke the way he does. If he didn't care, he wouldn't be so exercised.
I think he cares about being asked, but he doesn't actually. I think he cares about being asked consistently about it. Probably that, but I don't think he cares about his response really. I don't know who he was referring to there. I actually don't think it was the media. I think it was maybe some past players who were quite vocal about him.
Don't be letting yourself
in the aftermath of that. In the aftermath of the well, maybe not, but maybe the man I'm deputising for here. Because there was a certain McGuinness got his comeuppance after the All Ireland final last year by Kerry, and all the talk was about him beforehand. And I think Kerry probably took that into the All-Ireland final beforehand as well. I think it was probably an issue for them. The fact of the matter is, he has 5 out of 6 Ulster titles. That's a phenomenal record in the Ulster Championship for a county that only won their first in 1972. So he's got a great record, and obviously got a great coaching philosophy. Few changes, and I'm sure they will be fine. But I think if they were to give the freedom of the park, as Brian McAniff said, and everybody else, that's something they would have to address. And I think he knows that too.
Yeah, don't tell me if he got to run it back that he wouldn't make... A significant alteration would be to have someone track Paddy. But he definitely would make alterations. And
the only way that this will be settled, right, because we can sit here and you would love nothing more. And there's a strong likelihood that will happen, that come July or August, just at the end of July still, that the two sides meet either in a semi-final or a final again. And then we'll see who was right or who was wrong.
Yeah.
Now, I'll put it to you this. If Jim McGuinness had the chance to replay last year's All-Ireland final again, would he do the same? Would he give Paddy Clifford the run of the park again? Let him answer that. Let Donegal people answer that. We've had our opinion on it. Enough has been said, and I think we'll wait and see. We'll not know. We'll go play him next weekend. That'll be a dry run. Forget about that. But let's see in July, because at this stage they're the two best teams in the country. So all things being equal, they should be there. And what a game to be there! And you know what? I would love, and I said it. I'm on record. I'm pretty sure I'm on record of saying it last year. I'd love nothing more in terms of the spectacle of the game that Jim McGuinness and Donegal would come back, all guns blaring to rectify that All-Ireland final last year. And if they did, and they turned over Kerry, best of luck to them, because that's what we want in our games, that's what we want in our characters, and that's what we want in our teams. The teams that, if they take a knock back, they come back stronger. And by the looks of things, we'll talk about the game in a minute, Donegal are coming in 2026 with massive, massive intent.
The press conference after beating Kerry or something like that. It might be any finger wagging, but his words might suggest that. Colm, what did we learn the other night about Donegal? I think they played only for about the last 25 minutes, something like that, and played a bit. We already seen something a little bit different this year, shall we say?
Yeah, I think so. I think in the first half, generally they tracked players when they detailed them more. So. That was a change. I think I've seen a couple of their McKenna Cup games as well, obviously on TV, and they're moving it even faster than last year. The pace has really, really stepped up. They have a lot of big men that can really play football around the middle too. Jason McGee had a lot of interruption last year.
Colm, he was some loss last year.
Injury. He's a big man that can get around and he can play football, and just if he got a free run this year, I think he'd make a big difference to them too. And obviously Michael Langan, he's captain this year. Wonderful kicker of the ball. So they've so many elements, so many good elements. Shane O'Donnell and Finbar Rorty, two of their players that really, really kicked on last year. They're looking very good again this year. They were well ahead of Dublin. Dublin took a lot out of how they finished. A little bit like Galway. There was it was a salvage operation for Dublin, because it was looking very grim for them when they turned around, but they got better players on the pitch, and it made a difference. But yes, Donegal, I think you could see changes, subtle changes in how they dealt with Dublin's attack by comparison to Kerry last year. But they are moving that ball faster. They are shifting very, very quickly, and that was a trait in their games last year certainly against Monaghan and Meath. When they got to Croke Park, they were explosive that second half against Monaghan and throughout the Meath game. Obviously, Probably Meath's race was run at that stage after their campaign, but they've quickened.
You wouldn't have thought that was possible, but it looks like it looks like it is possible already. Dick, just from a Dublin point of view, as Colm says, they're a bit of a salvage mission. Like Ger Brennan definitely at one stage would have taken that result and finding out a good bit about the character of his players. Class wise, quality wise, is there still a fair deficit there?
Seems to be like it'd be to put them up in the top four, or even maybe it's a top 2 or 3, wherever it is. Like they look a good bit off at Donegal at their best, and we'll see how they do against Kerry. And having the whole pile to come back in to really bolster that, you know, they're going to give game time to a lot of guys, but it just looked like they just really struggled at the pace and the pitch of the game with that Donegal brought in Croke Park. And you know, I as always felt myself, like if you're not at the pitch of it, you know, Croke Park rewards pace and it rewards direct play, but it equally punishes teams that aren't fit to cope with it against the best teams, and they got exposed badly. Yeah, the second half, and there was an element of maybe Donegal sitting back, and no point in winning a game by 20 points and you don't need to, and leave boys tired. Because remember, those Donegal boys at that 4 McKenna Cup games, they were, you know, those guys have a lot of football already played in January, and going back to my point earlier, there'll be an element of load management now for Jim McGuinness, that he's got a deep panel. So he wants to give these boys game time, but not exhaust them, because he wants them ready for. Because it wouldn't have been normal for McGuinness to run these boys in January in McKenna Cup. So he wants to get off to a fast start. He wants to get legs into the likes of what's his name, young Shea Malone, see what he's like, and by all accounts, you know, he's adding to. Remember the no Shane Gannon, the no Michael Murphy either on Saturday night. So he'd have to be very, very pleased. But from a Dublin point of view, work in progress. I think there's an element, just Dublin supporters and Dublin players, there's an element of transition there, and it's a case of, can they find and mould players, and they're just going to have to give them road here in the league and see where they feature. See, can they compete at the best teams? They will win games. They'll not go down. I don't think that for a matter of fact. But they're not a feared team anymore. You know, Meath will be looking at them now again to go at Leinster, as will potentially Kildare, and that's just where Dublin are until they show us otherwise. Irrespective of some of the talent that they have, and still a lot of huge All-Ireland winners there's just not enough of them left at the minute.
Colm, Ger Brennan probably trawled Dublin and the lower reaches of various divisions, maybe a la something like Pat Gilroy did back in the day. But like he unlocked the likes of a Michael Dara or a Mick Fitzsimons, who won, I think, a junior All-Ireland. Didn't Mick Fitzsimons win a junior?
He also won an All-Ireland club title. That was Rory O'Carroll. He came into the team at that stage too. Yeah.
Is the quality?
Well, if you're looking at the results of the Dublin underage teams in Leinster in recent years, it's nowhere near where it was. Others have taken over. You know, that the really blue chip players, the 8s and 9s out of 10s, especially the 9s out of 10s that just came through en masse 15 years ago, and even 10 years ago with that 2017 All-Ireland under 21 title. So those players aren't really there. There's still a lot of good footballers around. One issue that they have is a reliable distance free taker. Off the ground, you have Began and you have Michael Murphy and you have Samuel Roy. Shane Walsh can hit them. Obviously, Sean O'Shea. But Dublin don't really have that. Since Dean Rock has gone and Stephen Cluxton no longer available, they don't have that. Conor Callan can hit them. He's hit from distance 45s with Coola in the club championship last year. He did it again last weekend. But on a consistent basis, Cormac Costello, if he came back, if he's back in, he can do it. But that level of consistency that those top players are doing it from distance, Dublin don't have that. And I still think there was more emphasis put on shooting 2-pointers at the weekend, but it's not something that they have. They are better at working the ball in at close range. Now, I think the 2-pointers would be a big influence on the game, and even greater influence this year. I've said that. But you look at Armagh at the weekend, they scored 127. Yeah. Biggest score, biggest margin of victory, no 2-pointer.
Mental, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's mental when you think about it. But Dublin, because of how systematic it was for so long, that was just, like, when you think about teams that outlawed that long range shot, Like Dublin essentially did outlaw, and it's almost like been coached out of a generation almost.
Yeah, it probably, the emphasis was working it into the high percentage scoring zone, and they were very, very good at it with their movement, and obviously the players that they got, very accurate from close range, but it's from distance. Two of the players that were probably better than anyone else on the team, certainly Paul Mannion, but Brian Fenton was very good from long range too. Brian Howard is very capable off the outside of the right foot from scoring from distance too. So I'd say they'll probably try and work him into positions where he can affect that kick.
Yeah. What made Dublin great when you compare them to the team that Joe Brennan has now, you look at a lot of the players as you just mentioned there, Colm. There was such a variety in types of footballers that in different situations, somebody could give you something different. It could be a Jack McCaffrey could come out of nowhere and scorch up the field. It could be Brian Fenton taking one out of the clouds and, doing a 1-2 and sticking it over. You have Dean Rock, Mr. Reliable on the freeze. Everybody gives something different, and you threw them all into the pack, that they were unbeatable basically for a large part. You look at that Dublin team now, very hard to distinguish between a lot of them. They all are fit. I said this last week, and it showed it on Saturday night. Fit, technically competent, but not exceptional, and that's excluding some of their top players. And that's not a bad thing. They're going to be a very competitive Division 1 team, but it's to beat the best of the head of them, they need to find something a bit more X factor that the other teams just have at the minute.
They were better when Luke Brannock and Sean Bugler especially came into the team. Luke Brannock is a talent. He's had his injury problems that have probably stalled his progress from getting up the Dublin ladder in more recent years, but he's been there. He scored 5 points. He came off the bench. Bugler this time last year, until he got injured, was the player of the league. And injury again impacted him. So I think a clear run, which is asking a lot, obviously, and we mentioned the larger panels and the attrition rate and the number of games. If Dublin were lucky enough to have a clear run that they could get their best players out 1 to 15, they'd still be fielding a very, very strong and experienced team. I have the concern about the longer range, medium to long range frees. But if you had a forward line of Niall Scully, Kieran Kilkenny, Sean Bugler, Paddy Small, possibly Ryan O'Dwyer coming in there, but I think Paddy Small has that explosive pace. Con O'Callaghan and Luke Brannock. It sounds pretty decent to me. It'd take a lot of holding and handling.
It's just the reality of it is that lads will fall away, isn't it? That's just the nature of it, the attrition of it all. Just looking at the Kerry game in particular, Colm, I'll just come to you first. We have a hooter problem.
Yeah, there is a hooter problem. And all things being equal, if everything worked in theory, yes, it's a good system. But theory is different from the practice and the reality of it. And we saw that split second offload by Tomas Kennedy to score that wonderful point at the finish. And it probably was a score. I think it's fair enough to say the ball was being released as the hooter goes, and that's within the rule. But why bring it to that? Why leave referees in that position to have to make those decisions? I was even in Salthill for Jack Carney's kick just before half time. That was gone over as the hooter went. If Jack Carney was a split second later in that kick, then there was a decision to make. Was the ball gone from his boot when the hooter goes? And players are playing, teams are working right down to the hooter now. They're going to work right down because they have, if they're not looking up at the clock themselves, they have people from the sideline shouting in at them 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. So they're going to get right down, and that kick is going to be launched within seconds or even a split second later. And that causes problems. Saw it with Westmeath last year. The hooter went, Conor Duke scored the goal. I think anyone who was there would acknowledge the goal came after the hooter. It wasn't a very loud, audible hooter down there at the time. The way it was, obviously the laborious plays like the All-Ireland final, but there were many more. There were many more, not just that All-Ireland final, which finished with such a wonderful point, but the 2-minute build-up to that beforehand, that was laborious. So that didn't extend the game, actually, the All-Ireland final. That was only a few seconds over the hooter, was the build-up. But some games have gone on 1 and 2 minutes, and the idea behind it was, the amount of time is exact and precise. Probably one of the issues is that the TV cameras or the TV clock and the stadium clocks aren't always synced up. I think that's something that's going to be looked at and maybe remedied, if it can be, in the coming weeks as well, so that the audience at home is not screaming that time is up, because the TG car clock had clicked into overtime and the stadium clock hadn't. So, it's down to seconds at that stage. When the referee stops it, does the timekeeper stop straight away? There's lots of that, so it's down to seconds. Personally, I watching the club championships and the finale, the finishes around the club championships, the referees handled the time there fine. There was no issue. And when you see them side by side, you say, well, is it worth the risk of some of these episodes happening around timekeeping to have the hooter and the stop clock in? This was rejected a few years ago as well. This has been coming on the basis that it works fine in the ladies' game. The ladies' game isn't under the same scrutiny, and probably the kicks from distance are not as prevalent. Not saying that they will get inside and try and work the ball inside, but they are different games.
It can happen so quickly.
It can happen really so quickly, and the distance kick is always on. Yeah. The distance kick is always on. So, an inter-county footballer, if he gets the right angle, can launch it from 45 metres comfortably. A lot of them can, and they'll get a kick away. If it's gone over, the controversy starts. And I think while it was less risky the way it was for the end of the league or the championship last year.
Yeah. Dick, I'm paraphrasing Jack O'Connor here, but it was something along the lines of, I don't know how so many intelligent people sat down in the one room and thought this was a good decision. Well,
I think that was more in relation to the 50 metres.
Yeah. Sorry, the 50 metres. Yeah.
Jack has had an issue with the handing back of the ball.
Yeah. From day one, I've said it, and I'm on record at saying at the minute that came out, I could see that been problematic in terms of its consistent implementation. Whatever about the consistent implementation, there is a complete disparity in the offence and then the potential upside reward for the other team. That's what is a relatively minor misdemeanor, really, in the context of a physical contact sport, not handing a ball to somebody versus one hand or dropping it in front of it. So that's what we're talking about here, right? He didn't take the head of him, he didn't hit him a box, or he didn't sort of, give him dirty verbals, right? That's the defence. That can actually translate now, and in most cases it does, because it's 50 metres. Like, as I say, from 45 metres, it's 100 metres back. Anywhere if that offence has occurred, you're giving the team a 2-point opportunity. And we've seen in many cases they've been hit. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't tally. So you can't separate one from the other to sort of say, oh, that's a disincentive. The disincentive is fine, but like in any walk of life, in legal law or common law, the punishment has to fit the crime. That's the problem here, is to say that whatever about the timing, even if it happens in the first minute, the 70 minute, it doesn't matter. Okay, maybe a simple rule should be for a free that's been brought up, it can't be a 2-pointer. Even that would bring it back, because it completely imbalanced in my mind that should be the potential reward for a team for what is a relatively minor misdemeanor, and that's the frustration, and it's not going to go away while the rule is there. And like I really enjoy Eamon Fitzmaurice. I think he's a brilliant manager. But I'm getting a bit tiresome now that himself and anyone else in the FRC, that they sort of fall back on the political side and how it was voted through. Like, as you pointed there, Colm, a couple of years ago, these same rules would be voted down in Congress depending on where the wind was blowing that day. Just because it was voted through, there was an element of groupthink last year with all the rules, that everyone's sort of saying, yeah, they're all great, pass them on through, we're not going to dissent. That doesn't mean that it was right, okay? And it doesn't mean that the rule is still right, and it should be still open for criticism and analysis. And so I think you can't have situations like we had at the weekend and in the club finals happen time and time again. What if it happens in an All-Ireland final? What if it happens on its biggest day? Because if it can happen there, it will happen in Croke Park.
The rule demands that the ball is handed back in a prompt and respectful manner. Now that demands some theatrics, because players literally have to go and start looking for the nearest player and make a point of handing it, delivering it on a silver service, which is against what they're about, that you actually assist, potentially assist in the score.
They're killing each other for 75 minutes.
And then you have to, and there is a level of theatrics about it, because Mike Breen held it out, looking at the referee, and the Roscommon player comes and snaps it out of him, and Brendan Cawley says, well, he can argue he didn't hand it back in a prompt. That wasn't respectful. Respectful is literally going and handing it on a plate to the player. I think if you cut out the respectful element of the rule, hand it back in a prompt manner, just hand it back. You don't have to deliver that theatrical element to make really pronounced way of handing it back.
You also have, Colm, lads are smart and they've been coached. They're going to start buying this and get bodies will go in certain ways.
That is the danger,
you know what I mean?
and it happened. It happened at the end of the Dingles and Finbar's game. When you look at that again and again, the player had to turn because he had to make a turn because the Dingle defender was running at him, and that's a natural instinct.
Yeah.
Natural instinct. If someone's coming at you and you've stopped, so it's. I think there should be more leniency on it. I don't think referees should straight away. They should evaluate it a little bit more. If a player is really messing around with the ball, yes, move it up at that stage. But maybe the respectful manner is what's catching everybody. It's hard to be very respectful in that regard when you've blown for a free. The natural instinct is you're so disappointed. Your instinct is.
You actually don't know, Colm, as well, when the whistle blows. You don't know, like it just.
Is it your own free?
Are you been done for over carrying, or have you been fouled, or have you been pushing your back? And that takes a second or two. And
it does, and that's where I think the leniency and the latitude for the player that has fouled in any way. That's where that must come in. I think there has to be a bit more give in this.
Yeah.
I think common sense, like referees by and large, they can be sort of tasked with applying common sense in situations. And for the vast majority of the association, that they've done. Like if you go back to the problem that you were trying to solve with this rule, it's the blatant guys that when they're fouled or there's a foul, they're holding guys up, they're holding on to the ball, and it creates a schmoz, and the next thing there's a bloody row. That's what we were trying to fix, and it has solved that, but it's created another problem. So you don't have to tweak the rules slightly without bringing the other back. People know when a player is acting a maggot or been sort of, there's an intent in what they're doing, and they know the other. So allow referees a bit of discretion and a bit of common sense, because the reality is, like a lot of rules that happen in Croke Park or happen in National League, when it goes to club football, referees don't apply these things because they know there has to be common sense, because you can't apply it. If you go to most club games, and I watching it last year, that rule, by the letter of the law that we were seeing at the weekend, it's not applied. They play a bit of common sense, and if a player drops it on the ground, well and good, but you'd very rarely see the ball brought up unless it was somebody been blatant. And I think that's sort of where it needs to land.
Well, you mentioned it there. It has virtually eradicated the flashpoints that develop around the ball, and hence yesterday, over the weekend in the Football League, there was one red card for a double yellow. That was it. By comparison to hurling, in hurling there was 10 red cards. So there you go, Michael.
I was just saying, you were saying about the club game. I rocked out at Park Tolchin last year, and I got the joy of a junior football game in the Navan O'Mahony's pitch directly adjacent to it.
Okay.
Junior B, Junior A. I can tell you the ball was brought up about 15 times. It was comical. If anyone said anything or anything like that, it was been brought up straight away.
Well, that's the other problem. You get a whistle happy referee that just goes to town.
It's just there's too much. There's too much of the unknown, like, you know what I mean. I think
it takes away from all the good work that's been done, and it goes back to that, the sort of 90% of the aims of the rule changes have been achieved, and you can't but say that
even the delaying foul has really helped the game, where an opponent with a free tries to block. You'd keep that all day for a 50-metre advancement, all day.
Yeah, 100%.
But that doesn't mean it's perfect, and that doesn't mean that you can't keep going, because there is the old laws of unintended consequences when you create a rule, something else, and if that does rear its head, you deal with it. And I think they should allow themselves this idea that the FRC's done and it can't go through Converse. I don't buy that. We've done so much good work allowing ourselves to be agile and test rules and change it. Why not tweak it? And the Hooters another one as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Con, I never remember timekeeping being the single biggest problem in GAA, but now this is what we're talking about, and it'll probably continue with the new hooter rule. Is it better than what it was for all the problems that to be fixed? But listen, maybe we are going to have to deal with it this year, so give it a season to run and see where it goes, but it's not a good start.
Dick, I'll come back to you. You kind of mentioned at the outset, obviously a disappointing start for Monaghan. Signs would suggest it's going to be tough up there, and as Colm said, all the Armagh scores coming as just like old scores, shall we say, in the old game, which is a hell of a lot to concede.
Yeah, listen, I have to be fair and honest here. I can't come on here and sit and talk about Donegals and Kerrys and all the rest, and have to be fair and honest when it comes to my own. It was as a poor a day out, Mike and Colin, for Monaghan in Clonus that I can remember. We sat a huge crowd, like there was massive Armagh crowd and big atmosphere, and you were looking forward. Even knew it was going to be a tough outing for them. You know, Monaghan generally compete well, and there's a bit of intensity and aggression, and we saw none of that. Like, we were sitting in the stand, and I sat down beside my father, and there was two Armagh supporters beside me, and I knew at the start they started mouthing, and you know yourself, you know, Armagh great passionate supporters, and I said to him, I said, Jesus, it's going to be a long hour now if this takes in. After the first couple of minutes, when Armagh went 3 or 4 up, there wasn't a peep in the stand for the rest of the day. That's the way the game went. Armagh just dominated from start to finish. They hit 127, Mike. They could have hit 140. Like, they kicked about 10 wides. They could have had another 2 or 3 goals. They got through on goal a few times. They didn't bother with 2-pointers because they were getting through that easy. They were getting into the, you know, they left a lot out there. McGuinness referenced in some of the papers that he gave out to his team at half time, even though they were 10 points up, because they were very wasteful. They actually missed probably the guts of 10 points in the first half. The reality is Monaghan have just too many players that have either retired or are injured. And like, I think from the opening game against Cavan last year, there's the 14 players not available. Monaghan just don't have the depth of talent and resources to compete at Division 1. And that was in Division 2 last year. And we have a lot of boys there that wouldn't have played at that level, be it inter-county or even club. They're coming from junior intermediate clubs. And that sometimes happens in Monaghan when you just get a run of injuries or retirements and you get a team on the wrong date. You're going to have to base up to that. But listen, we're not making excuses. We never do. There was a lack of intensity, a lack of aggression. You shouldn't just let a team run through you, especially in your home turf. As my father used to say, if nothing else, start a fucking row. Don't just don't let them roll over you. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Distract them or something. That was a bit disappointing that nobody sort of took the bull by the horns, because listen, it's only the start of the year. They've another 6 league games ahead of them, and there'll be tougher games and tougher outings potentially against Armagh. That's not to take away from Armagh. Was very impressed with what I seen. I think that's a team that, no more so than Donegal, probably felt, you know, that they finished the year last year, you know, unfortunately in some ways that they weren't the, you know, at one stage they were dominating Kerry, and in a blink of an eye, next thing they're out on their Oxters, and they've a team that still is very well capable of contending, even though they've lost a few players themselves. Yeah. But they're physically, they looked a league ahead of Monaghan, and they're like a team that's been on the road, you know, 10 plus years, some of them, and you could see it in them. And they'll have a say. I like the brand of football that they're playing. They've got big men in the right places, and they've got scores where they have them. And like Andrew Mornan, who is a player that's sort of been in and out over the last 5 or 6 years, sort of flashpoints here. Big and strong, took his goal well, was going hard at the end of the game, and can definitely add to them. So yeah. Good day for Armagh. Tough one for Monaghan, but listen, we'll pull our socks up and go down to the Hyde next Sunday and try and get a result.
Colin, will fly around the divisions. You were in Croke Park for the Meath game. I was very, like, whatever about, you know, quality, and maybe there's going to be a little bit of a quality deficit when they come up against, would say, the Kerrys, albeit they beat Kerry in the championship last year. The characters what impressed me most, to be honest with you, because they had a terrible first 20 minutes. Then all of a sudden, Owen Frayne, who wouldn't necessarily be known for it, it was a 5-on-1 underneath the Hogan stand, underneath the Cusick stand. He gets a ball off Conor Glass somehow, puts over a left-footed effort again, which wouldn't be a strong foot. Then all of a sudden they get a foothold in the game. Jack Flynn just takes the game by the scruff of the neck completely. Glass, who I mentioned there, was a peripheral figure in the middle of the field, despite being one of the best midfielders in the country and one of the most influential players in the country. Flynn starts ripping it up. Keane McBride comes in. They get a big show off him off the bench. James Conlon, who I don't think had played since the Roscommon game last year, comes in and is buzzing around, and all of a sudden they turn around a game that didn't look like it was going for them. And it's, as regards the bigger hitters in Division 2, and maybe a lot of them will beat each other, it's a big result to start off with, because Derry obviously, they haven't won a league game since the Division 1 final in 2024, but they would have been one of the favourites to go back up. So from Robbie Brennan's point of view and Meath's point of view, it's a perfect start.
Well, you've said it all there, Michael. It was a real show of character from Meath. Tommy Lyons, many years ago, in his second year, Dublin were after winning the Leinster title, and they came into 2003, and he described their slump as second season syndrome. And that's obviously under a new management and after a big lift. And you would have feared for me that maybe there'd be an element of second season syndrome. Beating Galway, Kerry and Dublin in the same championship year. I think only Offaly have ever done that before.
Thanks for that, Colm. Good man.
I said I'd mention that. So that was in championship history. So they're the three top teams in the Roll of Honour. You go and you beat them, and you say, well, that's pretty decent. But it'd be hard to step back up to that again. And this league is going to be difficult. And as you said, 5 points down, 20 minutes in, playing with the wind. They're behind. And I would have thought that Derry have to come strong in this league after the season and a half that they've had, really since the league final. They couldn't get a grip last year, but everything looked in place for them. They picked a very, very strong team, albeit they made a couple of late changes and brought in a debutant, Conor McAteer. So I thought, yes, Brendan Rodgers back, everything in place for them. They're going to struggle here. But they came so strong, and I thought the defence, Meath's not even 1-to-1, but their defensive cohesion and their ability to trap Derry players along the sideline is something new, something I wouldn't have associated with Meath teams in the past, to be able to affect that tactic. So that was something they did really well in the second half. Number of turnovers around the Cusack stand there at one stage.
Savage. To
really turn the game their way. And as you mentioned, Jack Flynn got injured last year, left the squad the previous year. So he's had a couple of years where he hasn't had full seasons. He's probably not the best defensive midfielder, but he can kick a score. He can win a ball and kick a score. And Keane McBride is a player that's back from AFL. He's been in around the squad for a few years.
I've never seen a ball kicked higher. It disappeared in the lights in Crow Park. It was an age coming down, and you think there's no way this is coming down over the bar, and then all of a sudden it does.
I thought it went out around Fairview somewhere and came back in. It was unique. It was a 2-pointer, that wasn't it?
I think it was only a 1-pointer. It was only a 1-pointer. He was inside, which was even more.
He was able to hit on the deck. He was able to hit frees into that wind and put them over from distance as well. So that's another string to their bow. And I thought the keeper did well after letting he came up and he scored a 2-point free after that, and he made a couple of very good saves. So all around, no individuals apart from Jack Flynn standing out, just collective. Really high collective work rate around really marked it. And once they got with insight, they held on, and I thought they were very much deserving winners by what they won by. Without some of their better players inside really firing. Jordan Morris, good battle with Conor McCluskey. Matthew Costello, he was on the periphery from time to time, and Owen Frayne. So there's probably more in them. But I thought even Kildare's result, and we'd probably jump onto that, Kildare going to Omagh.
Yeah.
And getting a draw with 14 players coming from behind. That might be the result of the weekend, along with Meath.
Yeah, and then you have Derry playing Tyrone this weekend, which is like, if Derry lose 2 games, like everything will have to go for them in the next 5 games. They'll have to win them all and probably get a head-to-head to qualify. And even you mentioned Jordan Morris. A good one could happen this weekend. They're playing Cavan. He's obviously playing his football with King's Court now. There's a fair chance he'll be picked up by one of his club mates. Paddy Mead, I'd say there's a fair chance could end up picking him up, which would be a mad story. Any off the top of your head, like when would that sort of thing have happened? Even not, it mightn't necessarily happen, but there's a fair chance of it happening. It's not like.
Well,
I'm going back to.
Okay, I'll give this a go now. I stand to be corrected. But did Desi Farrell play on Kieran McGeaney in the 2002 All Ireland semi-final when they were both with Nafina?
Yeah, possibly so.
Centre forward, centre back. I'd have to look back at that, but I'd guess that's a possibility.
The only other one I can think of, and they probably weren't even the same club at the time, but it was a time the 2 Ray brothers, both from Limerick, ended up marking each other in an All-Ireland quarter-final, hurling final. I think it was 73. Jerry was full back and his brother was full forward. Jerry was full forward, I think, and his brother was full back for London.
Well, I'll trump you with that, Michael, because the 1952...
Here we go now, it's quiz time.
I've opened a can of worms out, I'm not going to win.
I'm trying to think now, I won't let you go and get one.
The 1952 All-Ireland final between Meath and Cavan had the Maguire brothers, 2 Maguire brothers playing against, for Cavan playing against a Maguire brother for Meath.
Brilliant. Okay.
I can't compete with that. Colm wins. He's always going to.
Fair now. Colm did a book on it.
He did. Can't compete with that.
And he should know. Just flying through the other results, he said there, Kildare was a great result against Tyrone. Louth and Offaly was actually a right good game of football from chatting to anyone there, and Louth just pulled away at the end. They got a lot of cheap scores early. Offaly are missing John Furlong anyway, David Hyland missing a couple of players that they can't afford to be missing, and that was obviously Gavin Devlin against Mickey Hart, who would have worked together obviously in previous years. Other games even like Westmeath, who like maybe their fortunes will turn around this year, because they were the ones that got the score at the end to win a game against Sligo
which
that
they weren't getting last year.
They definitely weren't getting last year.
And that was difficult after the relative high for Westmeath of going to Newbridge the previous week and winning the O'Byrne Cup. Always going to be under pressure. Sligo obviously have had Connacht under 20 success in recent times. They have good players and they're under new management there, so they were always going to come with something, and Westmeath did well to win that game.
Yeah,
you mentioned Kildare, Westmeath, talked about Meath and Dublin. Like, for the first time in like I can remember, I'm actually looking forward to the Leinster Championship, because
the East is the way, Colm, would you say?
This is it. Like last year, it sort of caught us. Meath beating Dublin, and it sort of happened before you sort of realise, oh God, here we have it's a non-Dublin final. Whereas now you're looking at it, and I would say you'd have to think the Westmeaths and Kildare got a bounce from Meath last year and say, holy God, like for the last 10, 15 years we've been crying poor mouth that we hadn't the resources of Dublin, we can't compete with Dublin. It's not Dublin you have to compete with anymore. Well, you still have to, but that's not the excuse anymore. Pull up your socks here. You can have a cut at Meath or a Louth, and so you'd like to think those Westmeath players, the Kildare players, if the cards fall their way, they get a bit of form, they could be looking at a Leinster Championship, and that's what you want. Ulster's had it for a long time, and it's great to see it. So it'll be interesting to watch those teams as you go through the league. Are they sort of trending forward and sort of have a bit more sort of ambition than they might have had in previous years?
Even going down to Division 4, as London and Tipperary finished in a draw. Wicklow got a late result, and they would be strong favourites for Division 4. It was important to get that result,
With the exception of Monaghan losing to Armagh by 12 points. Most of the games were within the 1 to 5 point draws, a couple of draws as well, 1 to 5 point range margin of victory and defeat. So a lot of close games. Obviously they paired up well last weekend. Yeah,
Wexford getting the result in Division 3 was a big one as well, because they're probably one of the favourites to go down in Division 3.
Well, Dick mentioned Leinster teams. Leinster teams played Ulster teams in 4 games. And it was 3.5 to 2.5h, Michael. So
Ryder Cup style.
And actually,
20 years later. Well,
actually, the two results really that Fermanagh, or that Wexford went up to Fermanagh and Carlow went to Antrim. They're really good performances from those teams, because Fermanagh and Antrim would be formidable at home in those games and would have good records. Fermanagh are a very good side. I was expecting them to really challenge hard for Division 3, and maybe they will.
Brexit next. We will have.
Well, Antrim are just down, to Division 4. So they'd be obviously favourites to come back up. So that was a great result. And same Wexford.
Carlow and Wexford. Wexford did very well in Division 4 last year, obviously. So that was a good result to go up there and win. So that's certainly a change from what it normally is. It's normally very, very much the reverse when Kildare and Meath are playing some of those Derry, Armagh, Donegal, Tyrone. They invariably struggle against them.
Yeah, that'd be a bit of a red flag for Derry now. That was a strong Derry team that went down there, and they've had a couple of years now that they've been needing to bounce back to try and get them back.
And they had to.
A real knockback.
I thought they had to win it, and Conor Glass and Brendan Rodgers didn't really fire for them. I thought that they would be dominant, and having Garrett McGuinness, he played well enough.
Yeah.
But that was a strong Derry team, and they brought Rory Forbes, is one of their best prospects. They brought him in as well, and they did play well for 20 minutes. They were very, very good early on.
So it'll be interesting to see the response. Like Derry Tyrone, that was the traditional Ulster rivalry that they literally despise each other on the border up there. So it's in Celtic Park on Saturday night, I think.
Yeah.
If it wasn't such a horrible drive up, I'd nearly go up to it, because that should be a real dinger. Because there's a lot of stake there for Derry, And Tyrone, like they wouldn't have looked at that Kildare game being a game that they were going to cough up points. So you don't want to be finding yourself sort of chasing points in the last couple of games to get back up, because it doesn't do anything for your All-Ireland credentials, which both teams still would think they're in that sort of top bracket.
Last question. I think 2 is the most fascinating division. One is brilliant, it's unreal, but like 2, as Robbie Brennan said a couple of weeks ago in a presser, he was just saying in Division 1 you have that where when teams get to a certain point, some of them actually don't want to get to a final because they're scheduled and whatever, and they're happy when they're safe. In 2 you have to play to the last ball of round 7
on both sides. Yeah. You gotta keep going, because even now it's probably not as applicable this year, but even finishing 6th in Division 2 brings jeopardy. If there are some Division 3 and 4 teams who are mapped to make a provincial final, that potentially brings the 6th team. And Meath were caught like that 3 years ago. Was it 3 years ago when they went down to the Tailteann Cup? They finished 6th, didn't reach the provincial final. Down they went because Clare ended up beating Cork and Munster as a Division 3 team and got to the final.
Awfully beat Meath, I think.
It's some years it's nearly easier to if you're a team like a Monaghan or a Scommon, easier to stay in Division 1 than have to get promoted to Division 2, because to get out of Division 2 you have to sort of beat 4 or 5 teams that are very, very good, whereas at the top division sometimes a couple of wins gets you away against teams of the same level.
And there are teams like Meath and Cork, and obviously Tyrone and Derry, and I still think they're probably they'd be favourites, but Meath and Cork would really feel it's their time, or it's time for them to get up.
We didn't mention Cork, and Cork had a right good result as well, like beating Cavan.
I thought they would have won that. I thought Cavan were probably coming in under a little bit of a cloud if you would hear some of their their challenge match results. But to go down there and score 217, I think of what it was, Cavan would be happy with that performance. That's not an easy.
Should have won it. Like they were well ahead. Should have won it. And like this, what's his name? Stephen Sherlock, a new name, from Finbars. And again, he's no debutant. He's 26 or 27. But he's like a guy that sort of had been out in the cold, or maybe didn't put himself forward last year. I think he did very little, really, shooting the lights out with Finbars, and now he's sort of bringing it to Cork. So again, like a lot of the new faces that we've mentioned, Cork have unearthed somebody that's going to add something to their attack. So yeah, they'll be in the reckoning too. Bit off Kerry, obviously, but like one of these teams, there's about nearly 10 teams you could throw under a blanket that they could all beat themselves. But some of them are going to appear in an All-Ireland semi-final in the same way as Meath done. There's nothing between a lot of those teams, and that's what makes a great championship.
Boys, a lot of ground covered. Thanks a million. It's great to have it back. It's frenetic and
for what our opinions are worth.
Dick, thanks very much. Colm, thanks a million.